any point in time because Kaya has to let in someone and I have to get the kid off of the bus. So welcome to the 2-month review, the only books podcast more willing to watch an episode of Bluey than listen to Bill Simmons shill for corporate capital organizations. But we are a weekly podcast in which we talk about, I'll get into that in a second. Brian, I see your face. We're a weekly podcast. We take one giant book, break it down bit by bit, section, talk about it, analyze it, have a good time. We are doing, for this season, Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. Today we'll be going up to page 463 and talking about, what is the name of this section? Technically the reading for this week crossed over the end of Goddess of Scales and then the beginning of Sitting in the Bones. But if you listen to the podcast last week, we went all the way through that first section. So we're basically just in Sitting in the Bones. So we're going to be talking about that. We can talk about other things. My Bill Simmons reference is that I've been listening to a lot of Ringer podcasts, and at almost the beginning of every one, Bill Simmons comes on. He's like, things are expensive these days, especially for businesses. Here's how your business can save money. And I'm like, get out of here. Fuck you, buddy. I don't need to hear you telling me that businesses need to get breaks these days. I can't even
Well, quick question for you, Chad. Like, if you wanted to do something about this, which it sounds like you should, you could actually use LegalZoom.com. LegalZoom.com.
I do want to use LegalZoom.com because of this crazy printer ink thing where if you don't have a subscription, they electronically lock the ink that you've bought, so you can't print with it anymore. You have to have a subscription.
These are publisher problems. I care about artists. I don't care about your corporate side of things.
This is home problems. This is a domestic issue, Brian.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
This also feels like it should be illegal. Like HP should not be able to be like, oh, that ink you bought is no longer usable. Locked you out. So Brian, you just got back from Czechia.
From the Czechoslovakia?
Czechoslovakia.
Neither of those things are a thing anymore.
Slovakia. You've got to.
Wow.
Czech
I'm sorry. Do you mean the Soviet Union, Chad?
I can't keep up with it.
They change the name constantly.
I need to write a letter. to their government and let them know. Do you realize how dumb we are over here? We're going to call it Chechnya, and I don't think you want to be that. It's going to hurt your tourism.
Very true. That's very true.
Can you please think of our ignorance as you're making your decisions for yourself? That would really be helpful. Prague was absolutely gorgeous. I'd never been before, and it was like insanely beautiful. I got to see all the Franz Kafka stuff because that's the only person that's ever written anything from there is Franz Kafka. So I got to see all of that, which is great. I guess Milan Kundera doesn't exist. That's fine.
Do you know Bohemian Horrible?
No, I only know Kafka. I just told you.
Oh, okay.
Chad over there with his word salad.
Don't mansplain these wonderful artists, these non-Bohemian artists. No, all they have is Bohemian and golems. I found out that golems are from Prague as well.
And beer. There's a lot of beer, right?
Oh my God. It's like they don't drink water there. It's actually, you go to a bar, it's cheaper to order a beer than a water.
Yeah.
But no, it was stinking gorgeous. It's the kind of city where it makes you want to stay up really late and then sleep in. And like the city's so pretty at night with all the spires and stuff. And so I just stayed on West Coast time.
Did you stand in the in front of that gigantic cuckoo clock?
Oh, I didn't stand in front of it, but I walked past a bunch of people taking pictures in front of it for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So no, that was a lot of fun. And then we went to from there we went to Denmark, to the very north of Denmark. There's this place called Cold Hawaii. It's near a town. I'm going to mispronounce it, and all the people that know Danish that listen to this are going to hate me, but deal with it. Klitmøller, I think it's called KLIT. Klitmøller. It's way up north in a national park, and it is freaking gorgeous. I felt like Anne of Green Gables. just windswept dunes up in cold Hawaii.
Amazing.
But more importantly than any of that crap, I understand Beowulf now after going there though. So I get it now. The wind and the sea, it makes sense to me. Yep. But how is Iowa after their crushing loss in the national championship? How is Iowa doing? Are they okay?
Iowa's okay. Yeah. I think that there is a necessary pivot to I feel like the spring storm season made it pretty quickly to transition to the next anxiety making thing. So I had a talk on the 16th, and at like 11 o'clock in the morning, and multiple text messages of like, did you see the email? Did you see the email? And we ended up switching it to Zoom because there was a quote, chance of scattered tornadoes. And that is from the weather, like people. That's not just like a colloquial. And I was like, that's fucked up. Like a chance of scattered tornadoes. And everyone's like really on edge from the derecho a few years ago still. So like Iowa City is very happy to not fuck around and not find out at this point. So they pivoted to storm season, I think, but it was yeah, it was unfortunate.
And she'll be back in action with the Indiana Fever in a month. Like the whole schedule for women's college basketball players is wild. You get done at the tournament, you get drafted like 2 weeks later, and then your season starts within like 3-4 weeks after that. So
it's wild.
There you go. Boom. She got like a $20 million endorsement yesterday. So
hey, that takes care of student loans for sure.
I would hope so. So the other there's some big Australia news this past week that we should really? Definitely talk about. Yeah. So this TV show Bluey that we've been kind of talking about off and on, they were kind of dormant for a while. They hadn't had a new episode. The way that apparently it works is there's one guy that writes them, and then they make them and they just put them out into the world. Like there's not like the same way that we do ours, and they generally have like 3 7-minute episodes within one block episode, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the only time that this has happened, like generally, I guess they're released in Australia, then they trickle out to other countries. This last week, they dropped a new episode called The Sign, and it was 28 minutes. And there's speculation where it was airing that this was like the final episode, that it was all going to be over, that that everything was coming to an end, because the episode prior to this ends with Bluey's dad. They go outside and there's a for sale sign on Bluey's house, and that they're going to move. And so this whole episode is about them moving and selling their house, and their uncle is marrying their babysitter, and their babysitter's name is Frisky. And I have a lot of questions.
I've seen the episode Meet. Yeah. They do like a joint double babysitter episode. It's really
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Like, because they're like hooking up while they're teaching the kids bedtime story, like doing the bedtime stories and stuff. And
they start out with the kids asking them questions like, "Are you married? Do you know what true love is? Isn't that forever?" Like all these like weird and
yeah.
I just know that if I go to Pornhub and put in babysitter Frisky, I'm going to get something that's not Bluey.
You're going to get the telephone book. So obviously we're going to talk about literature at some point, but I do want to like rest here for just a moment. I'm positive there's lots of podcasts about Bluey, but there really needs to be just adults going through episodes of Bluey and complaining about whatever their like wholesome lesson is, or whatever the like just breaking down like agonizing granularity per episode. You know, do like if it's a 7-minute episode, you do like a 28-minute, give each minute 4 minutes of
a frame by frame.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so this episode, they don't move. Like the show like flinches. Like it's going down this path of like, sometimes change is good. Things might seem bad, but they end up being better. They might seem better and then they end up being bad. And you never know, like whatever. And they tell this story, or they're kind of talking about that. And the show does not have them move. At the last moment, like it gets reversed and they stay in their house. And so all is restored. So it's kind of weird because like the lesson
weak.
Yeah, exactly. The lesson that's supposed to be there is no longer there. But in the midst of this, like I've watched so little of this, but I've just always found it like kind of abhorrent just in general. And so this morning, as I'm folding laundry, there's a scene where they're all in a school, and Bluey's like, the teacher reads a story, and Bluey goes, "Well, why do all stories have happy endings?" And she's like, "Oh, because life gives us enough sad ones." And this one kid, so the kid dogs, whatever puppies, are sitting there. The child dogs, the dog childs, are sitting there, and one of the dog children says, my hamster ran away, and it never. My parents said it would come back, and it never came back. And then some kid goes, the snake probably ate it. Okay. And then the next kid, immediate transition. There's a sad little doggy that says, my dad doesn't live with my mom, and now he's lonely all the time. What is this show? To which another dog responded, our mom likes your dad. And I don't know what that means either, but Frisky says that is a real trip.
Oh man.
My mom will let you cuck my dad if you want to bring this all back full circle. Anyways, I did a little research because I was hopefully Kyle will be back, but otherwise she can jump into this. No big deal. So I did a little research because this cartoon is bizarre. And so I looked up other Australian kids TV shows to see if this is what Bluey is in relation to stuff. And Australia has some really, really bizarre things. So I came up and I looked around the world and came up with 8 kids shows. And 4 are from Australia and 4 are from elsewhere. And they're all a little bit weird. So your goal is to tell me which one is Australian and which one is not. Okay.
Okie dokie.
Here we go. And I have my quotes, so this might take a second. The first one is, okay, these 2. One is Mr. Squiggle, which is about a character who has a pencil for a nose and is held by Bill the Steam Shovel as Mr. Squiggle writes on another character named Blackboard. And then is that from Australia, or is the Butt Ugly Martians from Australia, a show about Martians sent to invade Earth by their evil emperor Bog, and their names are Bebop Baluna, Tutti Frutti, Doo-Wah Diddy, and Shaboom Shabooma, but they find they like Earth culture so much that they don't want to take it over. Which one's Australian? The Butt Ugly? Butt Ugly Martians. Butt Ugly Martians or Mr. Squiggle?
Well, there's a lot of talk about aliens visiting Australia. When you think of like Grand Crossing, the rocks that are out there. Let's see. So I'm going to go with and then you think of like Teletubbies. That's from like somewhere down there as well, which is
I think
idiotic
so too.
and bizarre. So I'm going to go with the alien one.
Oh, the alien one is American.
Of course
Mr. Squiggle. Mr. Squiggle. A pencil, like literally the image is like of a like kind of not cartoon, like a puppet sort of thing with a big pencil for a nose that like is held and like ring around like in a maniacal way. So that's that. Okay, this one is interesting. Okay. One of these 2 is from Australia. The first one is Liftoff. It was avant-garde puppet show made by the person who worked on Labyrinth, and included a faceless puppet whose existence was to make dreams become manifest. But it was a puppet with no face on it. Versus Ludwig, which is about a cartoon. It was a cartoon that follows the adventures of Ludwig, who is a mute gemstone with retractable limbs, a helicopter blade, and a cavernous body that travels all around the world and likes to listen to Beethoven.
Okay.
So
Inspector Gadget, Beethoven.
But as a gem, as a silent gem.
Yeah, or some LSD knockoff Jim Henson creation. Let's go with Labyrinth.
Labyrinth is actually from Australia. Yes, the Liftoff is from Australia. The Ludwig is from the United Kingdom, which sort of makes sense.
Sure.
Okay, these 2. This is probably my favorite pairing of these. Okay. This one is John Dillerman. Okay, and I'm just going to read you the description from The Guardian. John Dillerman has an extraordinary penis. So extraordinary, in fact, that it can perform rescue operations, etch murals, hoist a flag, and even steal ice cream from children. This is an animated series about a guy with a giant sentient penis. Or
it's a kid show?
It's a kid show.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm not kidding at all. This is also a kid show. It's called Round the Twist. There's an episode, this is again from The Guardian, quote, there's an episode called Little Squirt in which Bronson, the little brother, is aided by a water spirit, all good so far, in winning a competition. I'm listening to see who can piss the furthest. Oh God. And Bronson ends up pissing clean over a wall. Oh Jesus, oh God. As his classmates watch on, awestruck. Approved this show. So giant sentient penis or a show in which they have a pissing contest. Which one is Australia?
I can't do an Australian accent, but if I could, it would be something like where they go, "Oh, quite a pisser there." Like I could see that, like that all like, whoa. So I'm gonna go with the giant arcing stream of urine.
Giant arcing stream of urine is Australian.
Nailed it. All right.
Jan Dillermand is from Denmark. It's a Danish show.
That checks out because they're really open and mature and clean and tidy and willing to like go to those places. And it's probably very important to talk about that at a young age. So
and like, it came out right in the midst of like the Me Too movement. And so the article from The Guardian is like, people are questioning whether this is like appropriate. And they're like, no, it's about kids like, you know, being okay with their body. Like, I mean, if I grew up watching a TV show about a giant sentient penis, I don't think I would feel good about my body, to be honest.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody took my ice cream, let me tell you.
Oh my God. Okay, the final two, this one's very easy, but I like both of them. The first one is the Ferals, which is
that sounds problematic.
The Ferals, also from The Guardian. Here's a quote. Speaking of busted puppets, it's time to address the Ferals. What an incredibly weird and wonderful show. Essentially a sharehouse sitcom. It featured a quartet of ruinously rank animals hanging out with their two human pals and suffering under the thumb of their dickish human landlord. And if you're curious about the overall tone of the Ferals, one of the puppets, myxomatosis, is named after myxomatosis, a disease that affects rabbits and damages multiple areas of the body, such as the skin, eyes, lungs, liver, and genitals. So there's the Ferals. And the other is Curry Takora, in which there is a big red octopus that uses a special kind of ninjutsu to turn himself into any object he wants.
So I did have
widely criticized for promoting violence, theft, insolence, and all-around wrongdoing.
Because I had a kid show I was working on, and the character's name was Skay, last name Bees, Skay Bees, and as they go around, it was a kid show, obviously. What is this? I'm gonna go with the Ninja Octopus. Seems perfectly Australian to me.
Ninja Octopus is from Japan, which also. Which totally tracks. Yeah,
even better.
But the Ferals, it's funny because we have our feral donkeys. Ferals.
Yeah, I know.
Ferals is apparently like a big part of Australian culture.
I didn't want it to be real, and so I just stayed away. I was gonna go. I was much happier with, just stealing from other cultures and reappropriating. I'm gonna go with. I was more comfortable with that. This is wild, man. I want to know what's in the slush pile that was rejected, if that's what they took. That's what I want to know.
It's such a wild arrangement of like television, and I'll send you separately the link to this because you need to see some of the pictures, because every one of them, the Guardian has like endless amounts of content about kids TV, which is weird, but this has like frame stills from each one of the shows, and they're all super wacky. Yeah. So good times. In this section, I guess we could transition to the book, unless you have more bluey content that you want to share.
No, that's for my other that's for my next podcast.
You gotta bounce off this and get on that Bluey all day podcast.
Bluey balls or whatever they're gonna call it. But
Bluey balls, the Twitch stream that's never ending.
Yeah.
It's like it competes with the what is the Alan, not Al-Anon. What's a crazy weird Q? You compete with QAnon. And for like
I do have one QAnon cartoon thought. My daughter, when she was younger, was watching Masha and the Bear. You ever seen Masha and the Bear?
Oh, yeah.
I'm next to positive it's just propaganda, where the bear represents the state And this child is out there in the wilderness and will get itself in trouble unless the state intervenes and helps her out through her predicaments.
Takes care of her. The
So
bear
we
really
love,
takes care of her.
yeah, because this child for somehow is out on their own. Like her parents are dead. We've killed our parents, Bolshevik revolution, whatever. I don't know. But this child is out there on their own in the wilderness, and the bear is there to protect her at all costs. I don't know.
It was a little on the nose. Ham-fisted, I think, is a term
yes.
applies there.
So real literature, though,
Real literature, which is, but coming from that context, like this doesn't seem that weird at all anymore.
No, not anymore.
It's like just straightforward. So we're just going to look at the section today. One of the things that we talked about last week while you were in Prague was that we wanted to look through in the new chapter that we're in, Sitting in the Bones. And what we discussed was that in the way that you have to review this book, you're almost obligated to have most of the review be about explaining its social context. Like, here's the things that you need to know for this book to like kind of make sense. Like, what is the Aboriginal condition? What is, native title? What is the intervention? And most of the reviews are like half of the review is like just explaining that stuff, which we all had to come to as well. Like in the course of this podcast, we had to learn those exact things. But then it leaves like next to no space for like, does the writing work, and how does the writing work? Like, what is her style, other than just like, oh yeah, then there's also like this haziness and a lot of tellers, and it keeps coming back to the same thing. And okay, but like the book is important for this reason. So we thought we'd try and find like a couple passages that were like that we could look at as not just on the holistic sense of where this book is just circular. It's just wrapping around. Every chapter touches each one of the characters. They're all basically static in the same place. The relationships they're not advancing. There's usually like one new piece of information each chapter that sort of like adds to the overall picture, but the overall picture is being told again and again and again and again, cycling through. And talking about it on that meta level is one thing, but like, how does this work on its fundamental, like bit by bit level? We talk about the lines of the week, and those are usually like either funny or like, interesting for one way or another. But the paragraph is where she seems to really be working. Like with the paragraphs, like switch frequently from one paragraph to the next. Like the character might switch or the perspective gets added on to, but the rhythms seem to fit within those paragraphs. So we thought we'd like pick a few and kind of work through them. I have one in particular that's quite long. That's actually one whole chapter of this chapter. It's not quite long. It's like a page of this, but it is, I think, indicative of like one particular thing she's doing. And I have a couple others that sort of lead to that. But on the meta level for this section, again, everyone's looking for Aboriginal sovereignty. They don't want the police there. There's a section where they talk about how the police don't need to be there because they're already monitoring themselves. There's like a panopticon vibe. We can put up signs like we all know we're not supposed to do these things, so on and so forth. Cosman Steele's off trying to get his donkeys. There's a whole running joke that that dance is the moth-er of moths, like the mother with being moth-er, and that's like tough. I don't like that at all, to be honest. And she has come to believe that she is Chinese, so she is searching for someone to smuggle her family to China so they can be reunited with the Chinese because they're gonna get out of Praiseworthy in that way, and that's like their real heritage. And there are some funny parts with that. So I have like a funny part related to her and her doing that, and then I have the funny section that is from presumably for the first time from the point of view of the woman in charge, the white mother that Tommy Hawk keeps writing to and texting from her perspective as the director of Aboriginal Affairs, I believe is her full title. And I think that's the one that like I find most curious because it is outside of the context of this book. But I marked those two, and then a third one that like I truly just don't understand, but it's one of the ones that's very much her kind of mythos idea making stuff. So before we get into those, and I figure we can read them or like go over them even bit by bit just to see like how her prose works. And you from a craft perspective, I think would have a lot to say about that. But do you have any general impressions of this section or of what's been read since the last time you were on here?
Just the title of the section is really terrifying. sitting in the bones.
Yeah.
Just like, thinking about, being indigenous, being displaced, the horrors of what's happened there, and like the connection to the place and how far it goes back, and this idea of like currently sitting in bones, but then just like what are the foundations that this is built on and built upon? Like it is an absolute terrifying title for this section when you start to think about what it means.
And it is like, it's also like loaded because that is their native title, is that you have to inhabit the same space for X amount of time. And so dance is in the graveyard, right? And that's where like they keep saying like, we have native title to this thing because we inhabit this and we've inhabited it forever. So she is like literally in the bones in that sense too, which does like leads to like everything that you're saying. But like on that physical like base level, that's also like through reference to her being there with all of her moths doing stuff.
Yeah. And then I can't speak to it yet because I'm not educated enough for it, but I've been looking at some of the different anthropological theories on how Aborigines came to inhabit what is now Australia. It's really fascinating, like the different theories.
What are some theories?
Well, like one of the theories is like, so they're coming down the chain of like the archipelago that's near, like Java and whatnot. And this is, about 70 to 80,000 years ago. So obviously the land and the sea levels are way different back then. But they're doing they're running models of how many people needed to make it to that landmass in order for just the population to survive.
Yeah.
And it's in the order of something around like 1800. And they believe that people, like one model was that people just waded into the water and were swept out into this new, like, so you just like swam in the open sea and made it to another continent.
Wow.
Sure. Right. But then there's others that saying like, no, they must have been seafaring. And they're like, really, seafaring that long ago? So they're like, there's this fight between academics as to far as how they actually ended up there in the first place. But when you're saying like this idea of, so I want to find out more about it and I'll present it maybe in a couple of weeks or something. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Cause like, I don't know, it's not something that I usually consider, like with how did people end up where they're at and how did that even happen?
Yeah.
And if this is a people that have been in the same place for the longest time on Earth, that's a really cool puzzle to figure out.
Absolutely.
But again, I'm just kind of like giving a very like general stupid look at it right now because I'm dumb. I'm just now learning about this stuff.
I believe that they were ferried over by UFOs, and
that could happen as well.
That's
Mr. Doodle could have maybe a prehensile body part helped somebody make it over. I have no clue. Yeah. So
Grandma, kids, I'm going to take you to the promised land.
It's interesting though when you think of like Dance saying that she believes they're connected to Asia, right?
Yeah.
And if you go far enough back, perhaps that's part of the migration of the population getting there. I don't know, but I'll have to look more into it. But this idea of like they figured out mathematically that 1,800 people had to make it to this landmass, and to think about like 80,000 years ago, how do you get 1,800 people anywhere across the ocean? It seems like,
I don't
like you just canoed your way over there. Like how?
This is like a yeah, exactly. Like this is maybe an ignorant question too. How far apart is Australia from any other landmass?
Well, it depends on the time though, because if it's ice age, there's more ice, so there's less sea. The sea level is way lower, and so it wouldn't be quite as far as it is now. But I don't know what age they were 70,000 years ago. I have to go to Graham Hancock to figure that out. With ancient advanced civilizations. So that's where I get a lot of I haven't seen the Joe Rogan show on Aboriginals yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
I'm certain he's got it down. He'll have it figured out. No,
so I know you have things lined up, but I just want to read this first paragraph with all that kind of stuff in mind. This thing's freaking gorgeous. Everywhere, this is on page 417. everywhere the world was moving quicker into a crescendo of the confused. Like the absurdity that she puts into the lines, I think, is fantastic. There's like these like logical, like these weird like twists of logic that I think make the line so arresting. So like this idea of a crescendo of the confused, beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it, right?
And there's like the sound play there, quicker, crescendo, confused.
Yeah.
You get the K through those. And I feel like that's like a real driving part of some of these riffs, is that like like emphasizing that sound.
Yeah. So everywhere in the world was moving quicker into a crescendo of the confused, but up there in Praiseworthy, there were plenty of slower words being said, sad on the beach by old ashen-skinned spirit people, walking up and down several kilometers of sand and a never-ending search through the haze, while hoping to find the absent ghost spirit of Aboriginal sovereignty, and all the while jointly wailing, screaming really, saying things like, you had to ask yourself, what world did the mother think she lived in? Holy cow. Like,
yeah, this
coming out with a bang, man.
I had this marked as one of the potential paragraphs to look at too, simply for there were plenty of slower words being said sad on the beach. So being said sad on the beach is like a weird phrasing. Like you have to parse it. Like
it's super poetic. You almost want a line break.
Yeah.
In that to make sense of the wordplay of sad, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then said sad on the beach, and that has that sand sort of sound to it as well.
Yeah, all the alliteration, obviously, and
and that kind of implication. Ashen skin, said sand on the beach by old ashen skin spirit people. Like there's that kind of kind of bit to it, makes it very poetic. And I agree. Like that one, that I didn't stumble, but I caught my eye with crescendo of the confused as well, for that reason, that it is like a unusual, like decontextualized thing. And I think in this case, for this one, I think that all that works in her favor. I think there is like that shift that happens too. Everywhere the world was moving quicker, and then ending with these people on the beach jointly screaming one thing. You had to ask yourself, what world did mother think that she lived in? Becomes very directed again. Like the haze and the sort of like giant sphere, and then becomes like this one, like it gets funneled down to one thing. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but somewhat that last bit is like a little ambiguous to me, as like what does that mean? And I find that there's like varying paragraphs in here, ones where she's really trying to be funny, and the ones where there's like kind of this mythical higher level, and those higher level ones are the ones I get lost on.
Well, like pick up even the next paragraph, right? And again through these ancient coastal laneways running through the sands and into the sea far away of calm and storm, the old ghostly kinspeople move steadily through seasons. Like it's got that like mythic, epic, right? Like it gets that same feeling, like picks up right again after it punctures it the line before.
And this is the one where like it's this sort of paragraph exactly. The one that I had marked to do this is the one that's right after it. But was ones that you could use either of them for the same reason. I didn't choose that one simply because I can't pronounce 99% of the words that are in it. I use like technical terms for butterflies and moths, and like to do that. I'm
stupid enough on my own. I don't need help from this to display more of it.
Dosa polysema. I saw a cooking video this morning in which Oregon, they kept saying Oregon for oregano, oregano over and over again. It's like that's a trip.
Well, let's go back into the poetry of stressed and unstressed syllables here. So
that's how they say it. Isn't it in the UK? I mean, Latvian, that's how it's said in Latvian too.
Yeah, basil. It's basil.
Basil, oregano. And I'm like, what?
A fillet of beef.
A fillet of beef. Curry. Make some pumpkin curry.
So the one that I had, it does this though too. And these are the ones that I feel like are, if we try and identify, as we were talking last week, like what makes this sort of difficult. One of the things we talked about is like, it is hazy intentionally. And the debate on like whether, I don't think, my argument was, I don't think that she wants us to be like in and out and not really understanding, but that she's writing in this particular way. And that is one of the effects of it, is that you are like outside and not on firm footing. That's the paragraphs I feel like are the hard ones. Like these are the ones where I get lost and then just sort of drift off and have to come back through something. And I don't know that we even should discuss like an author's intent, but I don't know if her intent is to like send you into outer space where you don't know what's going on. But that's what happens to me on these ones. Although I think when I read them aloud, they start to make more sense. So the one I'm looking at is on page 418.
It's also not what my argument was, I don't think.
But
not that you wanted us to be confused. Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. You should have prefaced that with just preface it with
you can please do explain and refine your argument. I mean, we talked about it last week. I was just trying to summarize.
Yeah, no, I like that the game of her writing being that like that you are, because of the repetition, because of the sort of oral history nature of everything, that part, not necessarily a game, but that part of her intent of the writing is that by creating this like repetitive haziness and all that the idea is that your brain is kind of meant to sort of hit that like skimmy, glossy, like forgetting details. Like that's part of the idea. And that's why there is the repetition, because like the point of the story is A, B, and C, and then you have the rest of the alphabet just floating around there all the time as well. But if you keep bringing it back to the donkeys, to Aboriginal sovereignty, to Dance wanting to move to China,
Tommy Hawk wanting to be adopted by the
like all those things they're in almost every single chapter.
They're in every chapter.
Okay, well, see, I don't remember, and that's the point.
It's like every time you open a new chapter, it's like you have the goldfish brain. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, this book. What is this?
But okay, and related to that, and if I have to jump out, it's because I have to meet the kid off the bus, but I will be back. This is one that like forces me into that space, and I want to hear it read aloud and hear what you guys think. So 418, those were the days, and the old people hummed in a dizzying talk fest about the songs of the ages being a marvelous balance of infinite existence that they described in one movement after another, even while they too were rummaging through the contemporary view of momentary existence devoured by the quickness of change happening through every second of life in this known world. And these old ghosts well knew the gigantic ghost clocks of the all times covering the ancient land and could see how this clockwork too is being transformed. Though through having to search perpetually for something wavering off the radar, the spectrum of belonging to all existence, these old people had to find the essence of maintaining the learnt stability that had come through the all times until now, to bring it back before it was too late, before it was lost forever, while being unable to stop dead time from progressing forward into new time, to be killed before it had a chance to live inside infinity. And so they kept pushing back against these unknowns of time, to again be without any specific time, belonging only to the infinite existence of the world and the finite possibility of being without change in the changing of every moment. That's one that's like so high in terms of like it sounds high, but but it also is so high in terms of like what abstraction she's referring to there related to time and essence. But that's one that like the phrasings, there is some of the alliteration. The sentences are very long. There are a lot of these like 25-cent words one after another.
I checked out.
What's that?
I checked out.
And that's why this is the paragraph where I have a hard time. This is where
super hazy.
Super hazy. And I honestly don't, I didn't read it like that. I don't know what this is about. And I think that if you're going to say like pinpoint like where this book becomes difficult, these paragraphs are the paragraphs for me that make it difficult. Because I feel like I just don't know what that is. And then I kind of like go and kind of skim ahead looking for like, where can I seize the next? What can I seize onto next? That's there for me. But, you know, in normal book and like books and in writing, I love things that aren't, you know, tied to the real. But there's something about the sort of looping and the sort of nature of this that is unique to her and feels like kind of her fingerprint as a writer is embodied in here, and how what that's conveying, I think takes a lot to parse down. Like the old people are talking about the rummaging through the contemporary view of this quickness and the known world and looking at the clocks of before, that there's this like seemingly, I feel like this is maybe not a grand metaphor, but a way of using this as a lens, is that there are multiple times going on. We're in this world in which there's the internet, the things, dance goes online and uses social media, and there's that pace and that speed, but they're talking about the time of old when things are slower, and the ghost clocks of old with the ghosts that are there, and they operate at a different time maybe, but I don't know how that like leads. I don't know what that adds necessarily. I think that's like kind of, I mean, it doesn't have to add anything in particular. It's like part of the book and part of the texture of the book and part of its ideas. But those are the paragraphs I stumble over.
So what are your anchors, Brian and Chad, in this book? Like, what are, you say you skim forward, kind of looking for, sometimes you find yourself skimming, looking for the next thing. Like, is there a specific element or character or plot point that you sort of, as soon as you come back to it, you're like, okay, like this is where I'm in?
The kids were always helpful for me. But one thing that I'm thinking about, and I could be completely wrong because I usually am, when we're thinking about time, and like as a Westerner, like time is very like right now. Not a lot of history, not a lot of past, right? So everything's very present. And then if you're talking about a people that have 70,000 years in a place, like it's hard to wrap your head around what that time is and what that, like, it's a completely different perspective. Like if I'm zoomed in looking at something like right here and, you know, versus a jetliner 30,000 feet looking down, it's a very different way at looking at something. And it's like, it's even like just like messing around with something like sitting in the bones. Like as a Westerner, we stand on the bones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like just, oh, tear it down, build the next thing. Like just put it on top, like forget about it, move on. And it's just this very short, like goldfish brain view of everything. And then here there's like this deep, long understanding of things repeating, things happening, things going on. And like that paragraph made me think of that. Like you're wrapped in this haze, whereas we're like, I need to get through this so I can see the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it's like, we're going to just slow down and sit in it.
Yeah. I think, oh, sorry, Kai, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, I was going to say that and it does seem like maybe like it might be an every other week or every other chapter thing, but I don't particularly mind that goldfish brain for this book, because there are, like last week, there were parts where, you know, we talked about where it's like, I have no idea what happened. And then you hit those parts, that mean something. Like, I think like for me, it's the old people or like the grownups in the town, like yelling at the kids and doing this stuff and like, you know, shaking their fists at the iPhones and everythings. And it's also the guy and his donkeys. Like those are the two, like, I'm so excited when I get to a donkey part because those are great.
So I think going back to what you said, Brian, I do think that she is playing with this kind of two timeline thing, the grand, the epic, and like the book operates on that level. Here's a specific thing. Aboriginal sovereignty is representative of like people going after, accusing everyone that's Aboriginal of being a pedophile. He was involved with this 14-year-old girl, but all the other women are like, that's what we do. Like we would have done the same thing when we were 14. And he is a specific character, but then also being like Aboriginal sovereignty. So like that sort of both godlike level or bird's eye view or like high 70,000 year history, giant representation level. And then every so often has to like pull it down into the specificity of like a character. I'm going to get the kid. You guys keep talking.
Yeah. And there's those constant reminders too of the oracle speaking, right?
Yeah.
That takes you like way back. Something, again, Western world oracle, what? That's like a Greek thing, or that's like an old, like we don't sit around fires and talk. That's not that's not a thing.
No,
It's
and
iPhones. It's
and isn't every oracle like a top of the mountain thing? Like you have to like climb up to get to them and talk to them. Like it's not, you can't just pop down to the corner and be like, "Sup?
yeah.
Who's in today? Oracle 1, 2, 3, or 5 or 4." Skip that number.
Yeah, because there's that reminder too of like when you see the kids interacting with a modern world and the difficulties they're having with it, and then you see the adults kind of like wanting to reach back to an older world to find a sense of place. So you're seeing like this confrontation of the world is getting faster, it's accelerating, but there are people that have this like long history and are tethered to a place.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
absolutely.
You know, when you're asking about what you skim ahead and find, what I skim for that always brings me back in, or when I am kind of glossing over like this sort of language, I'm like, I'm seeing something, but not really in the line by line, word by word part of it, is that there'll be the italicized sections where someone's saying something or referring to something. And when I read those, I'm like, wait, what are they talking about? And then I'll go back and figure out like what the context for those are. But those for me are the ones that I look for. And I'm like, okay, why is this being said here?
Interesting.
And that
it always feels like a chorus to me. I could be wrong, but like with the oracle and the chorus, like it gives me that feeling, but I could be completely wrong. But
yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. There was one other one, so like that was one of the confusing ones, but then there's the ones that I like and are sometimes very funny and sometimes like hit or don't hit. There was one, I don't think we should take the time to do it because we're already at like 45 minutes, but chapter 8 in particular is one that I don't want to read this one, but I'll just say it, talk about it, is that this supposedly is from the point of view of the blonde mother figure, the head of the Aboriginal affairs. And she's like, who is this Tommy Hawk who's sending me all these fucking text messages? And it's like, delete. I don't know anyone named Tommy Hawk. And he's like, then she says like, and why did this person Tommy Hawk seem to know her every movement? Could you believe it? He wanted her to adopt him. I can tell you now that's not going to happen. I don't want to be loaded with a black child with problems. And then she's like, but wait, he's calling her mother, white mother. And she's like, you know what? It would be great for me if I had like adopted a black Aboriginal kid and just brought him around to like all my stuff. And they'll see like how much I love these people because I have like adopted him and I need to get a plane.
She was already visualizing her future self, parading her Aboriginal child, the last of his tribe, across all factions of Parliament. Oh my God.
So this is like the satire line within here or thread within here is one of the ones that I do gravitate towards too.
It's like Erasure. Did you read Erasure, Percival Everett?
Yeah. I mean, or AKA American Fiction.
Yeah.
But exactly. It's like that viewpoint, and her satire of it is like very pointed and spot on and funny by like just exaggerating that point of view a little bit. Although the core of it, the nuggets are always there. But that section I really gravitate towards too. The high-minded, like philosophical, abstract ones, I appreciate as poetry, and when I read slow, I appreciate the sort of like sound and like images that are there, but on a meaning level, I don't usually follow it very well. And I like sort of find my way back in through the chorus, through the people speaking or through a speaker and like, or the humor. The other one that I thought would be useful for the humor is back on page 445. And this is where Dance goes onto the internet. So it says, turning away from the floating spiderweb district spun over the ceiling, Dance began searching thousands of social media networks. Where were the people smugglers on the dark web who, while dropping off boat people in Australia, might be interested in taking her family to China? She set up a Twitter account called Cheap as Possible. Illegal people smuggler wanted for some poor Aboriginal boat people, she messaged. Pick up Praiseworthy Beach ideally. Destination China. Boat smuggler people with leaky boat need not apply. Small modern people arc was essential for 4 Aboriginal people leaving country. Never to return. Don't need US C-17 Globemaster military transporter. Only genuine people smugglers need respond with non-government references. For example, positive emojis. For example, thumbs up, thumbs up. So that I think is it's a unique part of the humor within this too, because frequently the humor has been working where it's like kind of a rant or like that sort of riff, your flow. Here's a little joke, go back and flow. And this has some of that, but the tone, the nature of that first one I read that has like the 40 word sentences. The first sentence is so many words and so many like abstracted notions on top of each other. This very quickly, when she hits Twitter, switches from that grandiosity to like pick up Praiseworthy Beach ideally, destination China, leaky boat not apply, like this clipped like directness that is like contrary to the writing throughout it. But the humor works through like that expectation too. But it is just funny, like imagining someone write their bio or their like sort of post that looking for smugglers. No governmental reference.
Keep it on the bus line.
Keep it on the bus line. Those are ones that I really liked or thought were like interesting for like the pulling you in or like how her humor works and then how that some of those description works. I remember some other ones just that were like maybe like the intermediary where how she advances, how she recaps the plot. And recapping the plot tends to, from the ones I looked at, sort of recaps what leads into what you already know from some other point, and then goes to like where Cosman Steele's getting his donkeys and the people don't like it, and then it will have like a chorus section where like Cosman Steele, whomever, will be like, that stupid fascist Tommy Hawk, like why is he doing this, and that gets you back into that character's voice. And then sometimes there's like one additional point where it's like he doesn't have his car's not working, he needs to figure out how to get his car to start. Like there's one more plot point, but the plot, like you kind of fade into it, have them say their kind of catchphrase, but in a new way, and then give them one more slight new detail to add on off to the next character as we sort of keep rotating through this like this circling space of this is, it's almost, it feels frequently to me like it is a painting that we're just sort of like going around and all the people are in their places, but we're now describing like, oh yeah, that guy's over there doing that. Oh, now that I look closer, he's doing this. Here's and now that I look at that again, he's got this element, but like something along those lines. That the book is like weirdly static for a book of this length and this many like characters and ideas that are kind of thrown in there. But I don't know. That's my thought. You guys have any response to that?
I'm just queued up, ready for my line of the week because we're at 50 minutes and I
go for it.
Got places to go.
Did Brian win the game by default?
Yeah, he got like 2 out of 4, I think.
Nice.
No, I got all of them right.
Oh yeah, all of them. Yeah. I didn't keep track of your score last week either. It's more fun just to go through the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, I mean, if it's just one, if it's just, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Well, I want to move forward with things because I have a plan, and my plan is this. It's on page 460. The forward plan only had one purpose: to move the entire Aboriginal world of grief into white prosperity.
Yep. And that's one that we always come back to the mayor who's like, forget Aboriginal sovereignty. We're going to assimilate.
I'm closing the beach down.
Yeah. I have, you have one, Kaya?
I do.
Go for it.
Okay. I don't know what page it's on, but I know it's at the end of the previous chapter. But it's where causes looking up the stuff about China and they're like, oh, the serial stalker. But and she tries to talk to her family about it to cause. And so any of the names she had found on the internet and mispronounced matter-of-factly to cause to instill a piece of Chinese information in his brain proved that their family had a more than casual connection to China. But Cause had a dead brain for anything to do with Chinese ancestral homes. All he wanted to know about was Chinese donkeys.
Oh man. I've one, my one's related to that too. Here it is. Yeah, here it is. So she had lost count of the number of times that she had applied for her family to be repatriated to the Republic of China by filling in what she believed were online repatriation or asylum seeker forms without understanding a word of Chinese, and probably not even contemplating whether she had confused the Chinese immigration officials with all the wrong answers. The cost of muddling anybody's brain cells is not her responsibility. She never received a reply.
Yeah, I like how they flag her. They're like in like a file of other like this. Why is this rando this not?
I mean, there's a good parallels there of like why white. I'll just refer to her as white mother or blonde mother or whatever, blonde white mother. Where she's like, "What is Tommy Hawk doing?" And the Chinese are like, "What is this woman doing?" Like all these people are like, we want some help. Like let us seek asylum in your country. And like, what? And then he's like, get me out of here. I'm stuck up here in this terrible place without an iPhone. Help! Come get me. Adopt me, white blonde mother. That too, like just like frisky babysitter would lead you down a certain path on Pornhub. Blonde white mother is gonna definitely do the same.
Yummy mummy.
Yummy mummy. Yeah.
Another
throwback if
another
ever.
episode from another time.
Yep.
Anyone have any final comments or thoughts? Anything else you want to plug or promote?
I mean, next week I have a list of 15 facts about donkeys that I would like to share.
Oh,
perfect.
Hey, you set the game up next week. You got the donkey facts. You can play true or false.
Okay.
Which would be super fun. And for next week, I'm trying to find what the list is. I forgot to do it. We go up to page 5. Ta-da. Oh, come on. Load for me. Okay, 526. So that is up it's into the next section, which is called Cargo Shifter. Up to chapter 5 in Cargo Shifter.
Cargo Shifter. That's my finishing move.
When I put you in the Cargo Shifter. That also a Pornhub category? I'm not clear.
It is now.
It is now. Yeah. So if you're listening to this, you're watching us live, subscribe, hit the like button, do all that kind of fun stuff. Otherwise, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Give us some reviews. We have a decent rating, but only a couple of reviews. Chime in, give us some love up there, or whatever you want to give. And we'll be back next week to go up to page 526.
It's not a democracy.